research, an institute dealing with extraterrestrial
Right,
life.
right.
You know,
That's true. Now, I mean, the again on the mythical worldview, this idea that history is whatever version that we're being told. I came back from Europe a few weeks ago, and it had been a long time since I had traveled internationally. You could certainly, I'm sure, speak to this, being from another country, that here in the United States, the cloak around whatever the truth is just far deeper, it seems, than it is in many other parts of the world. I was very surprised. I was in Germany, and I was very surprised the difference just standing on an American military base and then stepping off into regular society, what you see on television, it's just two completely different things. Do you find that as well? The media coverage in other countries is not even close to the sort of force feeding that we take in the United States.
yeah, it's really interesting how here it's dominated by major news networks.
Right.
And yeah, it's really.
It just doesn't appear to be
not
that way at all.
To this, I mean, occasionally you have little openings.
Right.
Larry King or Fox News will do a story on, Edgar Mitchell talks about extraterrestrial life, but then
Sure.
it kind of comes and then it disappears.
Right.
And the Washington Post, the New York Times, I mean, they don't run major stories, feature articles on this. I mean,
Right.
when the Washington Post did my article, it was in the style section. It was the front page of the style section,
Right.
which was good.
Right.
And there's a feature article, but you don't get the front page of the Washington Post
Right.
running stories on the UFO ET issue
Right.
as a kind of major political story.
Sure. And even Stephenville and any of the other, O'Hare. I mean, people didn't hear about the Chicago O'Hare sighting probably for a couple of months afterward. It seemed it just took forever for word to get out on something that seemed like it was so important.
I think there are those that are aware that if you can kind of delay the release of this information, then the news cycle is such that people have moved
Right.
on. Well, that's old news.
Right. The last thing I guess that I'd like to ask you about is just this concept you had put forth in the one interview I kept listening to about curiosity versus commitment to the field. Because for myself, I didn't actually think about this till just a couple of hours ago, but I suppose at the moment, even though I'm a writer and doing this, that I'm almost sort of an activist. I mean, I seem to have this, care and concern for the field, and I'm taking time away from my family to come here and, work on this. How can we make that shift? Do you have any suggestions on that? Because you clearly delineated, curiosity is great, and lots of people have the curiosity, but the number of people willing to, commit time and resources.
Right.
How can we change that?
Yeah, I think it's just a gradual process. It's just, to me, it's just like the collective consciousness is just starting to feel
Sure.
comfortable with this issue, and and everyone is different. People can be curious about a topic,
Right.
but it is a very challenging topic because I think what happens at a certain point, you run up against this thing where it's like it's vast, it's truly vast, and you realise that if you're going to try to unravel this, that this is going to really take a major commitment from
Right.
you. And I think there are, that's a difficult thing for a lot of people that have other priorities.
Right.
I mean, you might have an intellectual curiosity in this field, and if you explore that a little, then you can say, well, this is going to take up too much time, but
Sure.
but my girlfriend wants to do this or do that, or my job needs me to do
Right.
work, and so you have these other things that you say, well, these are commitments, and I don't want to undermine those in any way.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, but eventually, people will make the commitment because I think they'll see that there's no alternative. That we're not going to be able to deal with what lies ahead
Right.
unless we engage with this stuff.
Right. Sounds a lot like something Cheryl Jones said to me a little while ago, as a matter of fact. She said almost the exact same thing.
Yeah.
The last thing, which really has nothing to do with the interview itself, but the sort of sidebar point that I wanted to make was that I saw your DVD in the other room there. It's called The Science, Spirituality, and Politics of ET Civilizations. I will eventually get a copy of that. I can barely keep up with all the stuff that I had tried to cram in my head. But The politics word I thought was particularly interesting. I mean, I understand what exopolitics is and all that other kind of stuff, but it made me think of it in slightly different terms. And in one term, I thought I heard Mr. Bassett actually say this, that we may have to create some sort of treaty, for example, with the ETs, if that hasn't somehow already been done. But that we would actually have to have our act together enough to negotiate something like this. And I want to pull an obscure reference out just to get your reaction to it, because when I realized what I was looking at, it was quite surprising. I'm a survivor of the North Tower collapse of the World Trade Center. I was there working with Secret Service, U.S. Secret Service, on a project, and had no clue that I was going to be involved in something like that. But it really, as you can imagine, kind of changed my perspective a little bit on life. And so I started digging into various things, but among them was Islam. I was just curious to know what Islam was really about, what little I thought I knew about it. Well, I read the Quran, which I think to most people, Western people especially, seems to be this bizarre, obscure book that doesn't have any sort of real value to it. However, I don't know how familiar you are with that book, but in the different chapters are referred to as surahs. In surah number 72, they speak of something called the jinn, and the jinn is a race of beings, sort of like the elves and fairies concept, that actually strike a treaty with God, who tells them to stop torturing humans, to back off and stop using pain as a form of punishment, and that he's giving kingship of the planet to the humans, and that the jinn have to back off. And so they retreat into the hills, much like the descriptions of elves and fairies that you hear in Ireland, for example. People talk about, that hill over there has got a bunch of fairies in it, they're hiding in there, doing. When I realized what this was, it really struck me, because to me, it's an important piece of information. Now, I wouldn't know the first thing what to do with that information. I wouldn't know who to call, or even how to research that. But it seems like it's this sort of blatant evidence that's just sitting out there that may give us a clue as to where we need to proceed with those policy type decisions. I'm just wondering if you'd comment on that concept even.
Well, that video you mentioned, the science, spirituality,
right,
and the politics of extraterrestrial civilizations, I based that on the typology of extraterrestrial civilizations that was first presented by a Russian astronomer, and then Michio Kaku kind of elaborated on that, which was type 1, type 2, type 3
sure.
civilizations. Have you heard of that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So I basically said, well, each of these civilizations we can kind of like map out or connect some of the descriptions people have had of the extraterrestrials that,
sure.
That they've heard about, been told about, had experiences with, and we can kind of make a connection with these different levels,
sure.
in terms of how they use energy, how they operate, how they travel, all that sort of thing.
Right.
And so that's how I kind of developed this kind of spectrum of ways we can understand the different levels of interaction between extraterrestrials and humans, and the politics.
Right.
So the politics of some will be that we're a resource to be kind of utilised just as we utilise resources.
Sure.
And whereas a higher order of the extraterrestrials will have a much kind of more ethical perspective, that we are part of the universal all that is.
Right.
And that they have a kind of ethical responsibility to help us evolve,
mm-hmm.
because we're an extension of them, and so forth. So it's like you have different ways in which extraterrestrials would view us, and the politics would be very different from one to the other.
Sure.
With one, it's like, okay, well, if we give you this, you give us that. With these other ones, it's all about well, we give you. We're not interested in you giving us it. We
right.
give you to you because you're our brothers, sisters.
Sure.
We're all one.
Sure.
And you kind of accept it. That's the way things are done.
Right.
At a higher level, that there's no obligation to to do an exchange. If someone gives you something, gratitude is like a sufficient response.
Sure. It's very interesting. I have to get a copy of the DVD.
Yeah, okay.
I hadn't gotten that far yet.
It's okay. Well, you can view it online.
Okay.
You go to my website. It's a lot of the DVDs we kind of put online as well, so people can just view it.
Right.
You know, they're also for sale because sometimes people want to, you know, either support the institute or buy it for friends, relatives, and that sort of thing.
Right.
But yeah, it's online. If you go to my website, exopolitics.org, you'll find a link there to all of the videos that I've done.
Okay.
Yeah, and so there, that'll be. You'll find
I'll definitely look it up, and it was just funny to me that I hadn't, you know, as I said, I literally started on this book and this project and talking to the radio station, and I hadn't even gotten time to go to the website. I'm sitting here asking you questions about the institute, and all I know is what little I'd heard you talk about so far. So I really appreciate your time. I'll just give you a card just so you know who I was, and I may certainly contact you again if I can get the radio show up and running. I would certainly love to interview you again, and I'll try to make contact.
Right. So what you were working at the North Tower with the Secret Service?
Yeah. Well, as a matter of fact, we were over at the UN building when the first plane crashed, and of course it got everybody's attention immediately, but somewhere along the line I was just whisked into the car that I was in, and we went lights and siren right to the front door of the building. And when I stepped out of the car, all I could see was all this smoke and debris where the South Tower had already collapsed, which I couldn't process in my head. You know, they were there 20 minutes ago, where did it go, kind of a thing. And then the second building started to come down as it was just chaos everywhere, you know, fire trucks, all kinds of. So, yeah, I was probably about 100 feet from the front door, looking up as the collapse started, and I just had to turn, take off, and run. So,
right, okay.
Pretty amazing.
So you are with the Secret Service
No,
now?
no, I was actually working as a contractor. I'm a security expert. Electronic security is my real specialty, and I work with the Fairfax County Police Department, lots of other law enforcement, and they were doing a UN conference that weekend with over 500 diplomats in town for like nuclear treaty talks or something, and they wanted the auxiliary help. I was running 3 or 4 hotels up there, working the security systems in those hotels. And it was a great project, but obviously, you know, completely derailed by the events of the weekend. Yeah, so it was pretty startling stuff.
So you're still in that field?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I work as a technical writer professionally as a full-time job, but I'm traveling in the field using the security expertise for that company, and then I still am with the company I was with when I was working with the Secret Service. This is actually like a third job for me, you know, so.
Well, good luck with it.
Anyway, yes, thank you very much. I think I've got some real good leads, and I hope that I can get it to come together, because I think it would be a real useful thing. You know, I'm not trying to take it too seriously. I think there's a lot of serious tone here because there's a lot of serious work going on. But I think that taking that dialogue out into the public, especially to younger people, and saying, look, you don't have to be afraid to talk about this. It's real interesting stuff, and you know, there's an open door here. Please get involved. So
well, I'm sure whatever you're doing now is going to be great for what lies ahead.
I certainly hope so.
I think this issue is just going to grow and grow and grow.
I do too. Absolutely. And I was shocked to find out that the conference was happening after I started working on the book, after I had talked to the radio station. I found out that this conference was up here. I was familiar with the X conference, but I had no idea it was in Gaithersburg. As soon as I found out, I took time off of work and called Mr. Bassett, can I please get a pass? And anyway, thanks again for your time. I really appreciate it, and I'll speak to you soon.
Okay.